Hello, guys. We are just here to let you know that we are taking a quick break for a few weeks before we get into season 7. So, starting this week, we are going to be sharing some throwback episodes with you guys.
We have picked some of our favorite episodes to share with you guys. We're so excited to be planning season 7, but we will be taking a little bit of a break. We'll be back on September 20th, but until then, make sure you enjoy these throwbacks. If you've been meaning to get to an episode, go back and listen to it. Make sure you enter your questions on the website about upcoming topics that you want to hear us chat about, and go watch our YouTube videos as well, because we are also there.
Yeah, it's like the lesser known platform, but it's fun because you can see our faces and see our reactions when we mess up words or say dumb stuff. Enjoy the break. We will see you guys back in September. And until then, we love you and we miss you.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Enjoy the end of summer.
Hello, everyone. Today on the Up-Beet Dietitians podcast, we are joined with a very special guest. Mickala Parsley is a registered dietitian that works with patients undergoing radiation and chemotherapy. She works to ensure patients are well nourished to stay strong during cancer treatment, and also she provides insight to many of the nutrition myths surrounding cancer.
Because of her work in oncology, she has a passion for disease prevention, and she runs a blog and social media accounts providing nutrition tips and easy recipes. Mickala is also a big fan of Aldi, just like us, and she loves to share her Aldi grocery hauls with her followers. So, great episode. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Up-Beet Dietitians podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the pod. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, a fellow dietitian, and to me, a fellow Indiana liver. Is that the right word? Resident. That's a better word, not liver. Ugh, that was not the right word. Okay, you see how this is going to go already. Anyway, we are joined by a wonderful Indiana native, Mickala Parsley. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me tonight.
Of course. So Mickala is an oncology dietitian, which means that she specializes in cancer prevention and treatment. And so we're really going to pick her brain on those topics today. But before we get into that, kind of walk us through a typical day in the life, what you do for work, walk us through how you became a dietitian, what you do for fun, kind of a loaded question. So answer it however you wish, but just give us a little insight to who you are.
All right. Well, you said I'm an Indiana native, which I'm actually not. I feel like
okay.
I
Where are you
say
from?
that. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but I went to college at Ball State, chirp, chirp. But so that's how I became here, or how I moved here to Indiana. Met my husband. We moved to the Indianapolis area for my dietetic internship, and I love it here. So we have a home here now. We live here, work here. Like Hannah said earlier, I am an oncology dietitian. I work in a cancer center here in the Indianapolis area. I work with patients undergoing active treatment, so both radiation and chemotherapy. So that's like my full-time traditional job. And then kind of in my free time, I run some social media channels and a blog. That's really mostly just like general health advice, but I do like to kind of tailor it to disease prevention, just because I do work, in oncology. They estimate that 2/3 of cancer diagnoses could be prevented through diet and lifestyle changes. So, it's very important to me to kind of like get that message out there to the general public, to kind of empower them and let them know that we do have control over our health and wealth and happiness. So that's just a little bit about my work life. But other than that, I have 2 dogs. They're both rescue dogs, and I like to travel and hike and go camping. That's a little bit about me.
Very cool. Very cool. Very good summary of everything going on. And I actually did not know that 2/3 of cancers could be prevented through dietary and lifestyle changes. So that is very cool to know. And I hope everyone takes that. I hope that resonates with everyone, because I feel like it affects everyone. And it's something that I feel like people don't know they can really do more with it. So that's really cool. I'm sure we'll ask you more today about it. So it'll be great.
Yes.
So let's start off with kind of what are the general guidelines around cancer prevention, or what are the most unique or remarkable ones you'd want to point out?
Yeah, so like I said, I love talking prevention, specifically cancer prevention, of course, being an oncology dietitian. Two organizations that play a major role in cancer research and putting out guidelines, and kind of interpreting the research for us as just the general population is the American Institute for Cancer Research and then the World Cancer Research Fund. And those two organizations teamed up together and looked at all of the research and have put out general guidelines for cancer prevention, 10 of those. So I'll kind of like go over 10 real briefly and then maybe touch on some more ones that I think or dive deeper into some of those that are a little bit more nutrition focused. Well, they're all nutrition focused, but ones that I think are really important for us to touch on today. So just to run through them real quick, the 10 tips. First, to be a healthy weight a lot of times. And I know, in today's world and on social media, we're talking about healthy at every size. And trying to get away from diet culture. I know you guys are really big on that, and I agree, but also a lot of research and scientific evidence has shown that those who do have a higher body fat percentage do tend to have a higher risk for cancer. So just something to be mindful of. Number 2 is to be physically active. When we're active, that can improve immune system, reduce those body fat stores, to kind of help with that and being a healthy weight. Number 3, eating a diet rich in plants. So I know plant-based diets are super popular right now, which is awesome because it's getting people to think outside of the box of the traditional meat and potatoes meals that I feel like a lot of generations have grown up with. So that's a big one that I like to touch on a little bit more in just a second. Limiting processed foods and fast foods. Of course, I think a lot of us, it's pretty general information we're all familiar with. Limiting red meats and processed meats. I think this one's a little bit more well-known too, but something I just want to touch on real quick is, as far as the red meats go, there is a higher link to cancer, specifically GI cancers with red meat consumption. So these organizations, the American Institute of Cancer Research has recommended limiting that. So what does limiting mean? That's trying to stay less than 12 to 18 ounces a week of red meat. So if you think about it, that's still a decent amount. You can have a burger or something every once in a while, just being mindful of how often, try not to have red meat every single day. The processed meats, that is something that they definitely recommend trying to reduce as much as possible, just because there is so much of a connection to cancer and certain types of cancers and processed meats are your, lunch meats, your bacon, your hot dogs, those types of things. Again, every once in a while, it's not going to, you're not going to have cancer just because you ate a hot dog, but really being mindful of that and trying to stick to fresh meats when possible. The next, number 6 is limiting sugar sweetened drinks. So if we're drinking soda, Starbucks Frappuccinos, all of these sugary beverages all day long, that's going to really add up in excess calories throughout the day, which could lead to excessive body fat and a higher body weight too. So again, being mindful of what we're drinking. Going with that, limiting alcohol. Alcohol is considered a carcinogen. I know that in the past, there's been recommendations, 1 drink for women, 2 drinks for men a day to try and stick around that. But when you're looking at in terms of cancer, we definitely want to avoid as much as possible. So these oncology organizations are always going to be saying to reduce that as much as possible or get rid of it if you can. I feel like we live in a really good time where like it's almost a cool thing to not drink alcohol. We're recording this right now in January. A lot of people like to do dry January. A lot of bars that are newer in the Indianapolis area are having like mocktails and a lot of just fun alcohol-free beverages. I know a lot of breweries are coming out with non-alcoholic options. So it's a really exciting time to try and implement that and still be social and meet up with friends without feeling that pressure to always have an alcoholic drink. So that's pretty cool. The 8th tip for cancer prevention is to not use supplements for cancer prevention. Of course, I think most of us have heard that antioxidants are good for us. And so, some would infer that, okay, well, I'm going to go take a bunch of vitamin C or vitamin E, vitamin A, all of these vitamins and minerals to make sure I'm preventing disease. But studies have actually linked certain high dose vitamins with cancer development, specifically vitamin E and vitamin A. So trying to be mindful that we're not doing these excessive amounts of supplements. Number 9, of course, isn't going to pertain to everyone, but trying to breastfeed if we are able to. When we're breastfeeding, we actually have less, especially the length of time that we're breastfeeding, we are exposed to less estrogen because during that time, we're not having as much estrogen released in the body. Also, it's helping to increase cell death and that, making sure that we're killing off damaged cells and our body rapidly reproduces new cells in the breast tissue during that time. So that's pretty cool and interesting. But of course, that's only going to apply to you if you have children, if you're a woman, if you can also breastfeed. I know not everyone can. And then number 10 is following all of these guidelines after a cancer diagnosis. After we're done treating, and even, during cancer treatment, if some of these can be implemented, that's important too. But I like to tell my patients on treatment, you have a lot going on, like don't stress so much about all of these things. There's other things we can be focusing on during treatment that's more important. But when we're done with treatment, we want to prevent recurrence, right? You don't have to come back here and go through all this. So trying to really focus on these 10 tips.
I love the approach you take to all this. Like it's very moderation is key, because I feel like people will see those tips sometimes like on a handout or a flyer or whatever, and they will be like, okay, so I can never have processed meat again. I can never have red meat again. I should never drink alcohol. I should never have a processed food. And it's not that way. Like you said, you don't just eat a potato chip and then get cancer. Like it's so much more complex than that. And so that's what I love about dietitians. I know it's very biased of me to say, but I feel like most of us do practice that whole moderation thing instead of the all or nothing mindset, which, as we know, Emily and I always talk about this, it's just never effective, and it's not even going to get you to your goals. Even if it is cancer prevention, it sounds like it's not even going to be worth it, I would say, to have that mindset of super duper restriction. So I love to hear all those different.
Yeah. And we have to meet patients in the middle, right?
Yeah.
I know all of us live in the Midwest, and not to stereotype, but people more so in the Midwest are very set in certain eating practices that aren't very in line with all 10 of these tips or lifestyle practices. And so we have to do what we can and slowly implement all of these changes and build on that over time versus trying to go crazy and do all these. And like you said, never eat a potato chip again, never eat a hot dog again. I mean, even me as a cancer dietitian who is very in tune with all these things, if I'm at a barbecue in the summer and there's a hot dog, I'm going to eat a hot dog and enjoy that. but also I don't eat hot dogs every single day. I'm doing all these other things. So it's just the bigger picture for sure to focus on.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
something I try to stress too. So I feel like patients and clients don't always think of it that way. They think of the nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah, the one that I wanted to just go into a little bit deeper is the recommendation to have a diet rich in whole grains, fruit, vegetables, and beans, all those plant foods. I think that, of course, people are hearing this information, especially in today's society, to eat more plants, but I don't think people really know why it's important to eat these plants, and especially in terms of disease prevention. And when I'm talking with patients, they'll tell me a list of like 3 vegetables that they like and that they eat consistently. But when I kind of talk a little bit more with them about fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, and why it prevents disease or why it's good for us, then they're more likely to kind of broaden their horizon and try new things. So we always encourage variety in our diet because certain plant foods or all plant foods contain different nutrients. Especially you can tell right away when you look at something because all of these fruits and vegetables have different colors. And all of these colors actually are linked to different nutrients within that plant. And plants, they, by the time we eat them, they're not a living organism anymore, but they once were, and they had systems in place to protect them in nature. And they have things called phytochemicals, which is translated to plant chemicals. And these are the plant's natural way of protecting themselves in nature and elements from certain diseases. And those phytochemicals, when we consume them, plenty of research and studies have shown that thus helps us prevent disease. And all of these different colors offer different things. So I think most people look at an orange and know that there's vitamin C in there. And vitamin C is an antioxidant. It helps fight free radicals within the body that could cause eventually down the road disease. But also like things like tomatoes contain lycopene. People who consume more lycopene throughout their lifetime seem to have a reduced risk of prostate cancer. Our purple and red foods like our grapes, and you'll kind of know this because of red wine, but they contain a phytochemical called resveratrol, which resveratrol actually has been shown to help reduce estrogen production within the body. So all of these different nutrients from all these different plants, they offer different mechanisms or protections for us as a human. So it's really important that we're, yes, eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, but also that we're constantly trying to try new fruits, veggies, beans, whole grains, and try and switch it up frequently so that we're constantly getting in all of these different nutrients that can do different things for our body. So that's a big one. And especially here in the Midwest, I feel like, we're so used to growing up with the same fruits and vegetables. We're not in a tropical environment, different countries have different fruits and vegetables, but trying to try new things and really get creative with the diet. And I think that's what I like about the plant-based craze right now, is because if you eat more plant-based and you want to have fun and like the meals, you have to use a lot more plants than you ever did before if you were more of a meat eater. So just something to think about for those that are trying to eat a little bit healthier in terms of disease prevention.
I love that because I feel like people hear us dietitians say, just eat more veggies, but maybe we don't really know why we say that. So that was a really good explanation of why it is so important to eat not only veggies in general, but all different types and have a wide variety.
I think this is a good segue kind of into our controversial question of the episode. And we want to hear your opinion and your expertise on the statement of sugar feeds into cancer?
Yes. So unfortunately, when patients are diagnosed with cancer, they are flooded with information. A lot of times information is from Google, friends and family that know other people with cancer. And a lot of times it always comes back to what they should be doing with their diet. Because, right, we just talked about how important diet is for cancer prevention. So, of course, diet's going to be super important once they have cancer. And something that comes up a lot is that sugar feeds cancer. And this is a myth that I'm constantly busting. Like, I literally need that sugar does not feed cancer tattooed to my forehead at this point. But where does this come from? Because we got to realize, like, obviously it's coming from somewhere if it's so readily talked about and common in today's society. Well, glucose, which is sugar, carbohydrate, is the preferred source of energy for all cells in the body. So this is why when people go keto and they're cutting out carbohydrates or glucose, they'll feel really tired. They can't really think as well because we normally use all this glucose for our cells to have energy and to fuel its best. And cancer cells, when they're rapidly dividing and the tumors growing within the body, they're using much more energy than they ever did before, or that healthy cells use. They're using so much more nutrition, and their preferred source of energy is glucose too, just like a healthy cell. So a lot of times people will say, well, if we cut out glucose from the diet, if we're cutting out sugar, then we can slow the cancer growth, which of course, we all want to do. To help slow the spread and, possibly help treat and help with treatment to do its job. But when you cut out glucose from the diet completely, cancer is ruthless. This is how I describe it to all my patients. Like, your cancer is going to continue to grow no matter what. And what doesn't get talked about is that all cells and cancer cells don't just use glucose to grow. They're also using protein and fat to continue to grow and use that as energy. And they have mechanisms in place to turn protein and fat into glucose to be used for energy and to continue to grow. So when patients are on treatment, there's a big focus on making sure that they're staying well nourished and not losing weight to support their body throughout treatment. And when patients are super focused on this and reducing sugar from their diet, cutting out glucose, they can also be harming their healthy cells. They could be, making it even more difficult for them throughout treatment, which is already a really stressful time, to be focusing on all these foods that they can't eat, and which could also lead to further weight loss. But, something that I always talk about is, I'm not saying you can go and eat cake and cookies all day long, and that's fine and not going to impact your health and your cancer. Because if we're eating high sugary foods all day long, our blood sugar is going to be spiked, our insulin level is going to be spiked, which some cancer cells do have receptors on them that insulin attaches to, and insulin can help kind of stimulate growth with some of those specific cells. So there's like a roundabout way where, of course, like, to support our body, we want to be mindful of sugar and not eating it all day long. But it's not like if you drink a milkshake, you're growing your cancer cells as we speak. And then another thing that I like to touch on is, of course, if we have a high sugar diet, I touched on this earlier when I was talking about those sugary beverages. If we're having sugar all day long, we're likely having excessive calories from those sugar sources because they can add up quickly. And that can, lead to a higher body fat percentage, which has been linked to many types of cancer. So does sugar feed cancer directly? No, But, there are things to be mindful of around that space of sugar and glucose and health, that can impact cancer. So it's kind of just, a subject that you really have to dive deeper into and understand all of it before you can just say sugar feeds cancer.
Yeah, it's not always as black and white. I feel like as nutrition is often made to be.
Yeah. And, I mainly work with patients when they're undergoing treatment. And I think even if you've never known someone personally who's gone through cancer treatment, specifically chemo, that affects us more so, I feel like you've seen it on TV or a little bit. But of course, chemo causes a lot of nausea, upset stomach. And a lot of times patients are really struggling to eat, and cold liquids like milkshakes or oral nutrition supplements. A lot of people are familiar with like Ensure, Boost, Fairlife shakes are becoming more popular. But those are like the only things patients can sometimes consume. And so if you tell them that sugar feeds cancer, and they're going to take that, to heart, and they're going to avoid all sources of sugar, then they're going to have like nothing left on many days where that's the only thing they can eat. And that's going to do more harm to their health during treatment than it would be for them to just consume that. And also, if you're taking that sugar feeds cancer to the extreme as well, and you're not consuming fruit, because of course fruit has sugar. We just talked about how important some of those vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients are that come from fruit that help prevent cancer and disease. So you're going to be missing out on those nutrients as well.
All right, well, on the other side of the spectrum, now that we kind of know the correlation between sugar and cancer, we'd love to get into the correlation between artificial sweeteners and cancer, because I feel like that is one that I hear all the time. Because I work in weight management, and so those can be a really good tool to help decrease caloric intake. And every time I mention them, my clients or patients are like, "Ooh, but don't those lead to cancer?" Things like stevia, sucralose, ACE-K, all those different things. So we would love to hear your perspective on that, if artificial sweeteners have any correlation to cancer.
Mm-hmm. So, obviously when these organizations like the American Institute of Cancer Research are putting out that they don't want you to have sugary beverages or sugar sweetened beverages, the latter would be to have low sugar or maybe diet beverages. And I know that in society, just like the sugar feeds cancer myth, there's a lot of information out there about artificial sweeteners and their connection to cancer. This all began in the 1970s when saccharin was studied in rats. And they noticed that the rats, well, I think it's mice, but whatever, rodents, that saccharin, the rodents that consume saccharin did develop bladder cancer. So that's where that first stems from. And so it was deemed right away as a carcinogen. The FDA did not approve it for use and consumption. But then it was studied further in mechanistic studies, which means that it was then studied in like humans and what the effect would be on a human consuming that, because we are not rodents, right? That correlation does not occur, that the saccharin did not develop tumors within humans. So then it was, of course, studied much more than just one study, but it was eventually reversed and deemed safe by the FDA to be put into food products and consumed by Americans. So pretty much since that happened, there's been so many more sugar substitutes that have came onto the market, but it is always going to be tested and deemed safe by the FDA before it's put out for human consumption. Aspartame, which is like one of the more common sweeteners nowadays, that's like what's in Diet Coke that I know Hannah loves. that there was one study that came out of a lab by Italian researchers that linked aspartame to more like blood cancers, like leukemia. And they found a connection between those blood cancer developments and, again, the rodents that consumed the aspartame. Well, researchers went and were looking at their data and actually found many, many flaws within the research, and it was pretty much revoked. And then all the studies since then pretty much have deemed it safe. The FDA feels comfortable. They name it as safe. It is not a carcinogen. So that's why it's in our society today. It's in our food products or drinks. Now with anything, of course, we've talked about sugar. I don't want patients going and eating sugar all day long. It's kind of the same thing with artificial sweeteners. Different organizations, so the FDA and then kind of the similar organization in Europe have put out kind of like limits or like what they're called ADIs, which is acceptable daily intake amounts for aspartame, which in the US, the FDA's is 40 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. In Europe, they're a little more strict, and theirs is 40 milligrams per kilogram body weight. So what does that actually mean? For someone that's like 132 pounds, in Europe, that's about 36 cans of diet soda a day. So I'm sure there's probably someone out there that drinks that much, but I have never met someone that drinks that much diet soda. So it's just like putting that into perspective, like how much are you actually consuming of these artificial sweeteners? It's again, something we want to be mindful of, making sure that we're not consuming all of these all day long. As far as beverages go, water is the holy grail. We want to be focusing on things like water, low fat milk. Those are a little bit better than, just consuming something like Diet Coke all day long. Just being mindful of the bigger picture. And again, realizing that, if you drink one Diet Coke, you're not going to get cancer. That's there. If that were true, it would not be on the market. We have systems in place to prevent that from happening.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Like it would not be available to you as much as it is if it was going to just automatically lead to any kind of disease. I feel like that's most of our job, is saying things like that.
I know. It's not fun to be like in moderation.
I know.
But that's the reality. And that's what we as health professionals have to continue to get the message out there, because so many people are getting all of this scary information online and, they don't know what to believe because it is confusing and it's conflicting. But in almost all cases, moderation truly is key, and just being mindful of what we're putting into our body every single day.
Yeah. And this could be like a whole other podcast episode, I think. But like you said, it's not like sexy or fun to say those things. And the struggle is that the more dramatic things that are said, like if you do have Diet Coke, you're going to get cancer. Those are the videos that go viral, that everyone responds to and everyone sees. And our videos of have it once in a while if you want to, just don't get all the attention, which is, again, another conversation, but it's a good point to bring up.
I was actually curious what the equivalent of the 36 cans of soda to like a liter bottle was, because I was like, maybe people drink liters out there rather than cans. So it would be equivalent to drinking about 13 liters.
Oh my gosh.
If anyone was
That's a lot. I'm glad you did
Yes.
that. That's a better visual for a lot of people. Than,
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know how many come in a sleeve. I feel like it's 24.
Oh,
That's
like
just some
like a box pack thing?
Yeah.
I think that is 24.
Because then I'm like, you'd have to drink like maybe 1.5 of those. I was like, what if someone drinks something else?
And that 36, that's in Europe, where it's a little bit even stricter than here. So that would be even more here in the US. But if we're going with their limit, which is a little bit lower, that's that 36. So.
And even that's a lot. So definitely paints a good picture there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just catch
Maybe-
me on a
maybe
Saturday, chugging
Peeing
7.
a lot.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're drinking. If you're drinking 36 cans, you're gonna be in the bathroom all day.
Well, if it's Diet Coke, that's a lot of caffeine too. I feel like I'd be like bouncing off the walls.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
That'd be wild. Oh, okay. Well, that has been mind blowing and also hopefully very eye opening to our listeners. Those are the big questions we got for you, Mickala. We wanted to kind of really get into the general guidelines because Emily and I have never really touched on this before. We don't really know much about it, truthfully. That's not our specialty. So it was great to hear just the general tips and tricks for prevention and also get into the sugar itself and then the artificial sugars themselves. But if you could and if you would, what would you kind of say to kind of sum it all up? If you could like put it all into one short little sentence or phrase.
Yeah. So I always like to think about nutrition and diet as information that you can use to empower yourself. A lot of times with cancer, I think a lot of people, they know that there's cancer in their family and they're just doomed to get cancer. But like I said, there is a lot of power in our diet and lifestyle that can change that course and can help prevent disease. So knowing that and implementing that into the diet by, of course, focusing on those plant foods and eating a variety of those foods. Trying to limit alcohol, that's a really big one that I think society is going in the right direction, but that's something that isn't talked about enough because it is a carcinogen. And, moving our body and treating it with kindness and trying to look at cancer prevention and disease prevention in general, because that's the big thing. Like all of these recommendations and everything we talked about today is to prevent cancer, but all of those same recommendations also prevent heart disease, diabetes, all of these chronic disease states that are so prevalent in the United States. So it's not just about cancer, but also preventing all of these disease states and knowing that you have the power to kind of change your future and prevent that.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Awesome. So we always like ending our episodes with a fun bonus question where it's more of us just sharing our opinions. It's not really so much of a debate.
It can get heated, but doesn't need
Yeah.
to.
Oh,
Yeah. So the question for today, and we always like our guest start, is I'm not sure if this is, we're going to make it a debate. We'll make it,
Ooh.
which is better, French fries or onion rings?
French fries. I mean, is there really a debate? I don't
Emily?
dislike onion rings. Is there a debate?
Her eyes are
No, you go
telling me
first.
something,
You go
but
first.
carry
No,
on,
you go
Mickala,
first. You go
carry
ahead.
on.
I mean, I'll eat onion rings. I'm not going to turn down onion rings if they're at the table, but I would much rather have French fries. Specifically skinny French fries, like steak and shake French
Ooh.
fries.
Like the
That's
shoestring
the
ones?
go-to.
Yeah.
Those are good. Those are really good.
They have a
Emily?
name.
Yeah, that's
Shoestring?
like the shoestring ones. That's what I've always called them.
Okay. Well, now I know how to describe my French fry preference. Shoestring.
Yeah.
Okay, Emily, I have a bad feeling about this, but go ahead.
So my opinion would be onion rings are better because there's less variability in the quality of onion ring. I've rarely had a bad onion ring. I've had many fries I don't like,
That's true.
but I love
That's
fries.
a good point. That's a very good point.
I think it's also because there's only really one type of onion ring. I don't think there's more.
Oh,
I don't really know how you can.
you could probably add like sauces and seasonings, but like you're right, the onion ring themselves, I guess you can't really mix up very much.
Yeah.
And they're like
Fruit.
always like white or yellow, right? Like I've never
Yeah.
seen like a red.
Ooh,
Yeah.
It is always the same
I feel like I
Yeah.
would like that though. I love red onions.
Same.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love onions
yeah.
in general, but I gotta go with the French
Nice.
fries. Gotta go with the French fries. It's just with onion rings. When you bite into it, sometimes the whole like onion comes out, and then you have just like
Yeah.
the crispy part.
Yeah. There's no cute way to eat an onion ring.
Oh,
You either
no
have to
cute
like
way.
True.
put it on.
It is not first date food. No, definitely not.
No,
No,
that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah,
much more petite way to eat
Yeah.
with a French fry.
do a little
Yeah.
dip and into the mouth. Way cuter.
Love it.
I don't love the shoestring ones. Of course, I'll eat any fry and any onion ring, but if I had to pick a favorite, I think, Emily, didn't we already debate the best French fries before?
Yeah.
Was that just us or was someone else? I can't remember.
I don't know.
We have a lot of
I think it was
conversations.
What was the winner?
The
I know
verdict
I
on
said
that one?
curly.
That
I
one
said
got
curly
pretty
fries.
controversial too, because didn't you say that you like the crinkle fries too? And I was like, yeah, I don't like crinkle fries.
Mm-mm.
Oh no, I don't.
You
like
don't
crinkle
either?
fries.
They're mushy. It's like
Yes.
mush.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah, we got into
I
that
will
one too.
say my answer was curly fries.
That was
and
your
that's just a
answer.
slander.
I like curly
Let it be
fries.
known.
I like curly fries.
Yes, I think my answer was like a Five Guys or a Rally's, like seasoned
Yeah.
fry. Those are my favorites,
Yeah,
I think.
like
Those are good too.
yeah.
Or like Chick-fil-A, like waffle fries are also amazing. Those are nearing crinkle fry territory. So I
Yeah,
don't rank them in
those
the
are-
first place, but I feel like they are crispier than a crinkle cut.
But give me an aioli dipping sauce,
Ooh.
and I will eat any French fry that comes with that.
Me
That's like
too.
That's
the
true.
ultimate
Oh.
condiment for French fries.
It's so good. I love an aioli.
Mhm.
Mm.
Truffle
We've also
fries
talked
and
about-
aioli.
Oh, so good. We've also had an episode where we talked about like the best fast food like dipping sauces too.
Mm.
So now I'm thinking my answer is aioli. I forget what I said then, but aioli's so good.
Aioli.
So good.
That takes the cake.
Oh,
for me.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, I'm sorry. It's 2-1 on this one.
I'll
French
I'll
fries.
survive.
But onion rings are
Win.
still delicious. I mean, we will all enjoy
Yeah,
a great
they're
onion
both
ring.
great.
Yeah,
Both great.
Yeah.
I'll
I
take
don't
either.
discriminate.
Whenever.
I'll eat
no.
Yeah.
If it's deep fried, I'll probably get 2. I'll enjoy it. I'll enjoy it. Well, Mickala, give our listeners some insight on where they can find you, where they can follow you, and some more information on that, if you would.
Yeah. So on social medias, I'm more active on Instagram. I'd say that's like the most common place you'll find me, but at Sea Salt and Kale on Instagram, also on TikTok and Facebook. I have the Sea Salt and Kale Facebook page. And then I do have a blog, so www.seasaltandkale.com. You can find more of my recipes and just some blog posts and information there as well.
Wonderful. And we'll link all those
Amazing.
below for you guys.
Yes.
And we'll also link, well, I say we, like I'm part of the podcast,
are.
but I'll
Yeah.
make sure that they link some resources for cancer prevention that kind of dives more into these topics. And I can leave some links that kind of touch on sugar and artificial sweeteners as well, if you would like more information on that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. They
Perfect.
will love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Mickala. This was a wonderful episode, a totally new topic for our podcast. So it's going to be really great to have this to kind of refer to if we have patients or clients or people on the internet ever ask us about it. So this will be a good one to have in the, what's the right word? The data bank? I don't know.
Library.
The library. I'm not good at words. I also called you an Indiana liver. So I'm ending it on a good note, just like I began it on a good note.
Yeah.
Goodness. Love it.
Well, thanks again. We'll see you guys
Perfect.
next week.
Yeah. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Everyone will talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of the Up-Beet Dietitians with your hosts Emily Krause and Hannah Thompson.
We appreciate you all so much for continuing to support us. In order to support us and sustain the success of this podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review.
If you'd like to provide us feedback for future episodes and guest stars, follow us on Instagram at the Up-Beet Dietitians.
Lastly, you can show us support by providing a monthly donation using the link at the end of our bio.
Once again, thank you so much for listening today and stay tuned next Wednesday for a new episode. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.